All right, so I'm going to give you my overall draft grade as a player in general, and I'll give you my grades and analysis of what I think of these players. But it's pretty irrelevant to grade it at this point. So I'm going to give you the real talk about it. But we're going to go on to the first pick that we picked on the Niners draft board. So we're going to go on to this prospect. Okay, so we got safety Ji'ayir Brown from Penn State. I was very high on him on draft boards. You know, I had him in the top 3 as one of my favorite safeties in the draft. Like top 3 as in like the top 3 safeties I like. There was like 2 other safeties I like, but the more I started watching Ji'ayir Brown play, the more I just started to like his style of play, and he's a ball hawker. So he had 10 interceptions the last 2 seasons at Penn State. He's made a lot of big plays. He feels a need next year, but he can definitely contribute for the team. He can definitely step in if injuries happen. There's a lot to like about this kid. So I don't really think his 40 time is a concern. I think he plays a lot faster than what people give him indication of what he is, you know. He has the instincts. He makes plays at the right time. So as far as the overall grade, I give it a solid A, because the value was good. He was considered maybe a late second to an early 3rd round pick, and we got him at the end of the 3rd round pick. So I thought it was a steal. So I definitely give it an A. There's something to like about this kid. He was the MVP of the Senior Bowl, and he made a lot of plays. So I don't think it's a question. I think he is the guy that I like so far. Like, as far as the pick, dude, he's going to be a starter at some point. So it's a great choice. So let's go on to the next pick, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so when we drafted this player, so number 2, when we drafted a kicker, you know, first of all, you don't ever draft kickers in early rounds. I don't care if he's the best kicker in the world, bro. You can get a lot of great kickers when they're late rounds and undrafted. Justin Tucker is a perfect example. Justin Tucker is one of the best freaking kickers in the league. Was he drafted? Hell no, he wasn't. I'm hoping for Jake Moody that he can become as good as Justin Tucker, if not better. But as far as the grade, I give it a C, because there was better values to get. But then when you look back at it, the Patriots were going to get a kicker. So 15 picks later, they get a kicker. I can see why we went that route, but I really would give it a C, because there was other needs we can address. But as far as him, he'll be an instant starter, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. He's got a strong leg. He's been put in his bigger situations, and it's kind of an interesting pick, but I wouldn't put it like as a high grade. No, he was considered maybe a 4th to 5th round grade, I think, but I guess in some ways we had to wait until the 155 to get that player, so it made a lot of sense. But realistically, I'm going to just speak it like it is. Hopefully he pans out. So let's go on to the next pick, which is the 3 pick of the Niners, who they got, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so number 3, we went for a tight end. So a lot of the tight ends that got drafted before the 49ers, they were pretty much off the board. So it was kind of like at a point, you know. So you had to look for another tight end that was the closest. And Cameron Latu, to me, was maybe, I wouldn't have thought of him as a high grade, but I can see why he was a little hype on some draft boards. He was considered a early 3rd round grade, but from looking at the tape, bro, he's still kind of a raw prospect. He can still learn the position. He just needs to work better as a blocker, but I think that will get better in time. As a receiving tight end, he's shown some unique skill sets. He can break tackles. He's a red zone threat. I would say it's a B, because one, we filled the need at the tight end position to complement George Kittle, but was he any better than those other tight ends? Not really. There was maybe a couple of tight ends that I would have picked before Camelot 2, which is there was quite a few guys I would have picked. And I'll tell you those lists of those other 3 tight ends I would have picked before I would have went to this guy. So here's the option. I would have picked Brenton Strange. I would have picked Payne Durham, Davis Allen, and Braden Willis before I even get to Cameron Latu. But as far as the pick, I like the fact we addressed tight end. So that's why I gave it a B, because he's exactly where he needs to be. So it's a solid grade. You improve the position, you improve the group, so that's not a bad choice. But as far as him, let's see how he pans out. So we'll go on to the next pick, and I'll tell you why. Next pick is the Niners select Darrell Luter Jr. from South Alabama. I just wasn't sure about this pick, but it kind of gives me the Samuel Womack type pick. You know, a guy from a small school that nobody's ever heard of, but a lot of his tape kind of stands out. So he could develop into a quality starter down the road. So maybe the next year or two, you might hear this guy's name, and he adds quality depth at the secondary position for us, because we need some depth at cornerback, and he could definitely help this team in the long haul. So I guess if you want to add quality depth at that position, I would say I give it a B, because there was quite a few other options we could have went to. There was Charvavius Hodges Tomlinson that we should have took. I thought he was a better value. There was Kalen Ringo, I believe. He was there. I think he was still available before the Eagles even got him. I mean, there was quite a few other options. There was Corey Trice, but who am I to judge? We'll wait and see how that plays out. But as far as the value, it kind of reminds me more of a Samuel Womack type pick. So it can be that mystery pick that turns out pretty good. So we'll go on to the next pick, which is the next 5th round pick, and I'll tell you why. The next pick is Robert Beal Jr. from Georgia. So I started watching a little more film, and I'm very impressed. So we get this speed rusher in the 5th round. So you can see the comparison of the productions between him and Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith was highly drafted in the 1st round by the Philadelphia Eagles, but if you watch the tape, there's some similarities between those two. But we get this kid in the 5th round. They play in the same college. They were splitting reps like in college. But in 2021, he led the Georgia Bulldogs in sacks, and they won a national championship. So he was one of those guys that was getting to the quarterback. He's got speed. He runs a 4.48 speed, 6'4", 250 pounds. He's very quick off the edge, so he does add some quality depth at the edge rush position. So as far as the grade, I think it's a great value. I would say it's an A, because he's a great value. Like, this guy should have been a little higher. There's something there. You know, there's something there that Cassera can coach. And when I look at the talent-wise, that's something that you can coach. And he can probably turn out to be a really good edge rusher for the Niners down the road. So if he develops his craft more, there's going to be something to like about this kid. So I'm going to say a solid A. I know it seems too high, but if you look at his production and the way he plays, to be fair, he was on a crowded Georgia defense. But when he got his opportunities to play, which he played a lot of snaps in 2021, he led the team in sacks on a loaded team. Can you imagine what he could do on a Niners defense? Probably a lot more, probably similar production, if not better. But let's go on to the next pick, and I'll tell you why. So the next pick is the Niners drafted linebacker D. Winters from TCU. I like what I've seen from this kid. He adds value to the linebacker position. He's got speed. He runs a 4.38. He's undersized linebacker, but when he makes the hits, he hits people. He's definitely a really good value, especially in the 6th round. He can contribute on special teams. He can add some nice quality depth at the linebacker position. He just seems to be everywhere on the plays. So when you watch some plays that he did in the bowl game, he was everywhere on the field. So there's some tape there. As far as him coming into the Niners, this was a great value to get in the 6th round. I would say, if you were to tell me the grade-wise, I give it a B, because, I mean, it's just a really good value. I don't know if he'll be a starter, but he'll probably make a strong case to compete for our roster, and I think he'll easily make the team on special teams and maybe be the replacement for Dre Greenlaw down the road. But I like the value. The instincts are there. This is where you can get your values there, and this is probably where you get your B-plus players, and I think he's a B-plus player, to be honest with you. So That's why I give it a B. But he could definitely be a nice depth in case injuries happen. You can plug this kid in, and he has the instincts. He can cover. He's got a lot of physical. You can blitz him too. You can put him in the blitz package, and that guy can get to the quarterback. So there's a lot to like about him. So let's go on to the next pick, and I'll tell you why. Next pick, Braden Willis from Oklahoma, I think is one of the best picks. Because not only that the Niners double on the tight end position, they wanted to improve the area. Because George Kittle can't stay healthy. So adding Cameron Latu was just another piece earlier. But adding Braden Willis is just a huge bonus. This guy is a hybrid tight end. He can block. He's a yak guy. He's a willing blocker. He has the same attitude as George Kittle. He enjoys knocking defenders to the ground more than catching the ball. So does that tell you something about this kid? It tells you how much egger he's willing to fucking prove otherwise. And then when he got drafted by the Niners, he wanted to prove all 31 teams that you missed out on him and you're going to pay for it. That's a great attitude. If you look at how he produced last season, this was probably one of his best seasons by far because he was getting involved in this offense. So he had 39 catches for 514 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was definitely a factor. There was a lot to like about him. Not only that he can block, he's a yak guy, and you can put him on some trickery plays. There was a play where he threw a pass to a wide receiver or a running back, and it resulted into a touchdown. There was a play where they did a reverse play, and he made a key block. So when you look at a guy in this value round, this guy seems like a really, really good reach, like to get. I think you get this kid and you develop him, and this guy could be really good down the road. So as far as my grade, I know this sounds biased, but I have to give it an A. You get this guy in the 7th round, which I had a 5th round grade on this kid. I think he can be one of the best tight ends, if not the best, but it sounds biased for me to throw it out there. But I'm telling you, this kid's going to be a baller. But I think the fact that the Niners picked him at that spot, that's a steal. So let's go on to the next pick, and I'll tell you why. So the next pick is Ronnie Bell from Michigan. I think it's a steal. I think he was graded as a 4th to 5th round grade. He was more of a possession receiver. I think he was coming off an ACL injury, and he played solid last year for the Michigan Wolverines. He's a possession type receiver. Doesn't seem like the big body receiver, but seems to make the tough catches. I think you bring him in to compete for the roster spot can be intriguing. So let's see what he can do. Maybe you develop this kid, and maybe down the road he can be the replacement to Juwan Jennings next year. So maybe you can see what he can do during training camp. And if he can beat out somebody, that's cool. But if not, if you can find a way to stash him on the practice squad, that would be huge, because this kid would be learning the playbook and he'll be ahead of the curve. So I think he would be a nice value. And this is where you get somebody like him. But I don't know. I don't think he would have a chance to make the team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he has a great training camp to where it's hard to cut this guy. But I think he could make a strong case. But realistically, as far as the grade overall, man, he just, you don't get this type of value like this high. So I got to give it an A for Ronnie Bell. Because if he doesn't make the roster, but you got a guy who was a 4th to 5th round grade, he went to the 7th round, in the end of the 7th round, and you got this kid. This is great value. So if you get great value in the later rounds, and he's supposed to be a high draft pick, dude, it's an A+. Maybe down the road, this guy can develop into a nice possession receiver that we can look for. So I think he would be a nice grade, but I don't know if he'll make the roster, but I think he can make it in the near future, and he could probably develop into a nice special teamers or a solid number 3 receiver. So let's go on to the last pick, and I'll tell you why. So the final pick for the 49ers pick, Jalen Graham from Purdue. I was very high on this guy. I had a 5th round grade on this kid. So realistically, it's an A+. He's a hybrid safety / linebacker, but he's going to play linebacker at the next level. His coverage skills is up there. He'll cover. He can make plays. He's a physical tackler. He backs it up on the field. He is a guy that you can add on your roster. He can be good on special teams. He can be good on your depth pieces. I mean, as far as like covering other players, bro, he would be in good position. You can look at this kid and you can develop him. See, you bringing in some guy that can definitely compete for that roster spot, and I think you don't want to rule him out. If I'm realistically, you got other guys that you got back on a very cheaper deal. If I was somebody like Flanagan Foles and some other players, I'd be freaking concerned about my job, because a guy like Jalen Graham is hungry, bro. He doesn't guarantee a roster spot. He can make a strong case. And if he stands out, for whatever reason, McQuarrie Ball and Flanagan Foles might be too concerned, because one, the front office might even think, well, we got this kid in the 7th round. He's on a very cheaper deal. Why do we want to keep a guy like Flanagan Foles and those other guys? They got to think money-wise. And if he stands out, it wouldn't surprise me if he makes the team. So I would say it's an A+, because this guy can be a difference maker on special teams, and he could be a nice piece on our defense on depth chart. He can step in if injuries happen. But you can put him in the coverage situation. You can put him in the blitz package. He can tackle, and that's pretty outstanding. So that's pretty much my overall of looking at the player's perspective. But as far as an overall grade, I would say as a team in general, it's a B-, because there was like 2 positions of players we should have drafted, but we neglected it. An offensive tackle we should have picked at least. A defensive line depth we could have added, a D tackle. We could have added some of those guys, but no. We double on tight ends, which I was okay with. We double on linebackers, which I just didn't understood that part. And then you add a cornerback, which we tend to do every now and then. And then we go early on a safety, which I really like. But you draft a kicker. You draft a kicker so high. He better be the next Justin Tucker, or else this is a disappointment. So that's pretty much how I look at it. So we'll know by next year and the next few years how this grade pans out. But as of my realistic opinion, it's a solid draft class. I'll give it that. So that's about how I feel about the team in general on the draft. So let me know what y'all think, and be sure to hit the subscription and hit the like, and leave me some comments with some more topics. And as always, go Niners.